You at 11. Now, time for the story with Martha MacCallum.
Thank you, Shannon. Live from New York tonight, here is the story that you have not heard.
I'm free to hug my family. I'm free to live life.
11. Now, time for the story with Martha MacCallum.
Thank you, Shannon. Live from New York tonight, here is the story that you have not heard.
I'm free to hug my family. I'm free to live life. I'm free to start over. I cannot. This is the greatest day of my life.
What a story, right? Since President Trump took office, he's received 2,800 petitions for clemency from people who feel that their punishment exceeded their crime. So how did Alice Johnson become the lucky one who actually gets her life back? She is here exclusively in moments with her surreal story and the unbelievable 24 hours since she walked out of those prison doors. Alice spent 22 years behind bars for charges related to drug possession and money laundering after she fell on some hard times and faced financial desperation. So just 8 months ago, she happened to catch the eye on Twitter of reality star Kim Kardashian, who took up her case, and she pleaded it with Jared Kushner and President Trump. And just 1 week later, she is a free woman. She walked out of that jail cell this morning where she was supposed to spend the rest of her life and into the arms of her weeping and grateful family. Can you imagine how all of these people feel having their mom and their grandmother back? Alice is going to join us in just a moment, but we begin tonight with Britt Hume, Fox News Channel senior political analyst. Britt, good evening to you.
Hi, Martha.
It's been very interesting to watch this. This has obviously become a priority for the Trump administration to grant clemency, to grant pardons. We've seen a slew of them. What do you make of this part of the president's goals?
Well, it'll go in the books for a lot of people as another example of him ignoring the norms that have accompanied presidential behavior. After all, there is such a thing as the pardon attorney at the Justice Department, and there is a process by which pardons are supposed to be gathered and processed and examined, and then recommendations made to the president. Now, the president has, to be sure, Martha, sweeping authority to grant pardons. This is one of the most sweeping powers he has. And the purpose of all of those processes is really to make it easy for him and to protect him from making a mistake. That is to say, for pardoning somebody who doesn't deserve it, who will then, turn to crime again or whatever it is. So the president takes some risks here, but this is one of his powers, and he doesn't care much about norms. I'm sure, Martha, he considers that the last thing he was elected to do was to observe all the norms in Washington, which he considers the swamp.
Yeah,
so here we are.
I mean, it's fascinating to watch, and and as we know about this president, when someone who has a compelling argument puts something in front of him, he likes to act on it. And that's what he did in the case of this woman. The other cases he's looking at, Rod Blagojevich, who we have spoken about, Martha Stewart, those sort of fall into a different category and raise the questions about whether or not he's also trying to make a political statement with the potential for pardoning those folks because of all of the people who are under scrutiny in his own world who he thinks may face a similar fate.
Well, I think that requires us to do a little bit of mind reading, which is beyond my ken. I've been a reporter for 50 years, but I can't read minds, and it's not at all clear to me that his potential commutation of the sentence or the pardoning of Rod Blagojevich is an attempt to say to Paul Manafort or somebody, don't flip on me. The president says there's nothing to flip about. So, that's possible, I suppose.
Yeah, but when you look at some of these cases,
Martha.
Britt, many of them, were adjudicated by Fitzgerald, by Comey, by Mueller, by the same team that he feels unjustified by. And in some cases, in Blagojevich's case, he had the same kind of raid that Paul Manafort had at his house. So the only point that I'm making is not that he's trying to send a signal to the people who may talk or may not talk, but that he may be sending a signal about justice and about how he feels about what's right and what's wrong.
Yeah, he's thumbing his nose at the prosecutors a little bit. But I wouldn't say that about the Scooter Libby pardon, for example. There's a lot of people have been encouraging that for years. I wouldn't say that about the Jack Johnson pardon. So, it's kind of a mixed bag here of different people at these pardons. It's a pretty diverse group.
I want to ask you about a couple of these Fox News polls that just came out a short time ago, Britt, if we could, and we're going to speak with Ms. Johnson right after the break. This one, should President Trump, and we're moving on to the investigation here a bit, should he agree to be interviewed by Special Counsel Mueller? 60% say yes. 32% say no. Let's move on to the next one. Did President Trump's campaign coordinate with Russia? Now, back in June, it was at 40%. In January, it was at 42%. Now it's at 44%. So that's one number that seems to be increasing a bit. The president's been pushing back so hard about the witch hunt on Twitter. And I wonder when he looks at these numbers, he may think that that's not working, Brett.
Well, and I think the alarming number there, Martha, and you probably have it in front of you, I don't, is the increase in the number of people who think he may have been involved in some kind of collusion. And so you'd think that would bother him. But of course, people have been hearing about this for so long, and this struggle has been going on for so long, that you would expect people to become suspicious. And let me just turn for a moment to the question about whether he should be interviewed. That number doesn't really surprise me. And the fact is, Martha, that I don't think that his lawyers are resisting this because they think he's guilty. I think his lawyers are resisting this because they think that this guy, who's such a loose cannon and who is a lot of the time, so inarticulate, they'll never say this, but he's so inarticulate that he might fumble his way into saying something that isn't true unintentionally and get himself in trouble that way. And, even straightforward questions could give that kind of an answer.
They're concerned because he's Donald Trump, and they see the way he answers questions, and they see the way he sometimes speaks in hyperbole, and, they obviously, I would imagine are very concerned that if he gets into a room like
Martha,
that, there won't be much leeway for that.
If you were representing him, would you recommend
No
he go
way.
in?
No way.
There you go. Well, that kind of explains it. It explains the difference in our view and the viewpoint of a lot of the public who think if he's got nothing to hide, why not answer questions? It kind of makes sense on the surface. But you look a little deeper and you think, well, maybe not.
Yeah, you got to consider the client in all cases.
Exactly
Britt, thank you so much.
You bet, Martha.
Good to see you tonight.
Thank you. You too.
So coming up next, as promised, Alice Johnson and her attorney will join us talking about her newfound freedom, the fact that she became an ordained minister when she was in prison. She's a fascinating story to tell. Also tonight, a former U.S. Navy sailor who was also pardoned by President Trump and is now threatening to sue the Obama administration, saying Hillary Clinton committed a bigger crime and got no time. That their stories line up in a very close way. This as we hear that the new IG report will be out June 14. Christian Saucier on his exclusive story coming up. So just an update on our guest tonight. Alice Johnson and her attorney are just getting set up. They're going to join us in a moment. But in the meantime, also breaking tonight, did you hear about this? June 14, a week from today, we will finally get a look at the highly anticipated Inspector General's report on the FBI and the DOJ's handling of the whole Clinton email investigation, which reportedly will say that James Comey defied authority as FBI director. It's 400 pages long, and it is about to be released. Those findings are very important to a lot of people, and they are also important to this former Navy sailor who was recently pardoned by President Trump. He says that he was sent to jail for a very similar issue that Hillary Clinton was looked at for. He took pictures on his submarine, but he says that Hillary Clinton did much worse with no consequences. And now Saucier is threatening to sue the Obama administration, saying that President Obama and James Comey need to answer for their actions. He is here exclusively with us in moments. First, Trace Gallagher in our West Coast newsroom with the backstory on this one. Hi, Trace.
Hi, Martha. The lawsuit alleges Christian Saucier was subject to unequal protection of the law. Saucier admitted that in 2009, when he worked on the USS Alexandria, he took photos of the submarine's propulsion system, which he knew was classified. He says he took them to show his family and he denies sharing them with any unauthorized source. He later destroyed his laptop, his camera, and the memory card that stored the photos. Saucier's lawyer points out that his client took 6 pictures of areas that are confidential or restricted, and that former FBI Director James Comey said Hillary Clinton's private email account contained 110 emails and 32 email chains considered classified, including 8 chains that were top secret and 36 chains classified as secret. Hillary Clinton maintains she didn't know the information was classified, though James Comey says she clearly should have known. The treatment given to Christian Saucier versus Hillary Clinton also became a major theme of the Trump campaign. Watch.
How about the young man took pictures of his submarine? He wanted to have some pictures. The submarine's not like it's a brand new submarine, it's many years old. They put him in jail for a year. And she does all of these different things.
And it wasn't just the Clinton comparison driving the narrative. 2 other sailors on the Alexandria also got caught taking photos in classified areas. One was given a reduction in rank. The other was docked $560 in pay. Saucier's lawyer says these types of cases are almost always handled within the military. Instead, Christian Saucier was dishonorably discharged from the Navy, lost his VA benefits, and was a convicted felon until President Trump pardoned him last month. Here he is right after the president cleared his criminal record. Watch.
Like I said, I still have faith in the system, and that's exactly the reason why I maintained the above board thing. I served my time. I didn't cause any issues in prison. I did my time the right way. I took my punishment like a man, and I got out, and I did my best to be a contributing member of society.
And he is very grateful the president took action. He knows a pardon is not a magic wand, but says he is staying positive and looking forward. Martha.
Thanks, Trace. Joining now for an exclusive interview, that pardoned former Navy sailor Christian Saucier. Christian, great to have you with us tonight. Thank you so much. You had this strange parallel experience of watching what Hillary Clinton was going through and what they were finding, day after day and week after week in these classified information that was on her server that she tried to destroy. And then you hear this from James Comey when he came out on July 5th, 2016. Watch this.
All the cases prosecuted involved some combination of clearly intentional and willful mishandling of classified information or vast quantities of information exposed in such a way as to support an inference of intentional misconduct or indications of disloyalty to the United States or efforts to obstruct justice. We do not see those things here.
Through your mind when you listen to all of that, the same FBI was investigating you. Sorry.
Well, thanks, Martha, for having me on. And the funny part is like I said, right after that, he said if anybody else does this, they'll be in prison, basically. So it's okay if Hillary Clinton does it, but anybody else, you can't. And I think that's the major point of my case. Look, I'm fighting for equal justice for everybody. I've already served my year in prison. President Trump's giving me my life back. This isn't about money. This isn't about anything. This is me fighting for the average American citizen. We shouldn't be subjected to a separate set of laws than Hillary Clinton or James Comey, who admitted to leaking classified information to the press to try to benefit himself, or it's the same thing with Andrew McCabe. These people aren't above the law, but apparently they are, and I'm going to fight that until, as long as there's a breath in me, I'm going to fight that.
Good for
I'll
you.
drop this lawsuit. Yeah, I'll drop this lawsuit tomorrow if they restore my faith and the American people's faith in the justice system, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, that's the one thing that we all, you expect that, right? That if you break the law, which you fessed up to, and you destroyed the evidence, I would imagine probably because you got scared, right? You threw the laptop
Absolutely.
away. You went through that process. But, everyone expects that the same rules apply for everybody. But unfortunately, it turns out they don't. So now we're going to get this IG report on June 14th. What's the potential for using what you see in there to help you with your case? What does your lawyer say about that?
Well, I think it's going to be a bombshell. I think it's going to be very revealing. It's going to show how James Comey decided, who broke the law and who didn't. He interpreted the law a completely different way for Hillary Clinton than he did me. And that's just upsetting. American people should wake up every morning with faith that the justice system is going to protect them. That's what it's there for, not to imprison them. The true enemies of the state isn't the serviceman taking pictures of something that he's proud of. It's the people changing the laws to benefit their cronies. That's what's truly breaking down this country's infrastructure, and I think that's where we need to focus, and I hope that's what this lawsuit will do. It's like I said, I'm going to fight for this as long as I have a breath in me, because it's truly, when I was in the military, I fought enemies foreign, and now I fight enemies domestic, and that's really what I believe Comey is. He's a domestic enemy.
Christian, thank you. I know you say that you're so grateful for the pardon and you're starting to get your life back together with your family. So we're happy for you that's what's happening in your own life. And keep us posted with this lawsuit. It's going to be interesting to watch. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me on, Martha.
You bet. So now to our other top story. Alice Johnson, a free woman tonight after a grant of clemency from President Trump after 22 years that she spent in a federal prison for charges related to drug possession and money laundering. Alice Johnson and her attorney, Michael Scholl, are here. So Alice, how's it feeling 24 hours in? How did you feel when you woke up in your house this morning?
I felt wonderful. No more bunk beds over my head.
I mean, it's a remarkable story. I mean, is it all sinking in for you? Because it really happened very fast, Alice.
It happened so fast that it's really now just starting to sink in that I'm truly free. Today has been a very busy day for me, but I'm just so happy nothing bothers me.
I know you've said that, you expected to spend the rest of your life in prison. And that's what you were expecting. And I just can't imagine, and I know you became an ordained minister, how did you get through 22 years, a third of your life, for a nonviolent drug offense? How did you get through all that time?
The only way that I was able to make it through that time, and this is the truth, was my faith in God. I knew that one day He was going to bring me out. And I lived my life with an eye toward one day walking out of those doors a free woman. And the day that I got the news that President Trump had granted my clemency and given me a second chance in life was the best day of my life.
I do want it, because I know it's important to you to speak out to other people. And you say you want to bring those who are still left behind with you. But I want to go back to the bad moment in your life for just a minute, if I could. Because I think people need to know that you were in desperation. You had been divorced, you lost your job at FedEx, and you turned to crime. You got involved with these drug dealers, and you were a facilitator, an intermediary for them. What would you say to someone who right now finds themselves faced with that same kind of moment in their lives?
I would say, don't make a permanent decision that can change your life forever based on a temporary situation. Just because you go in a panic, take a breath and wait it out, because it was not worth it. That one mistake cost me not to be able to be there for my grandchildren, my elderly parents who died in prison. It changed the course of my entire life. Don't do it. That's what I say. Don't do anything illegal for some temporary gain, because I'm telling you, it is a trap.
How are you going to help others who you feel, because, it really is all about the
my message is I'm really wanting to fight hard in this whole prison reform effort, because that is what is important. And I tell anyone who is fighting for their life, do not give up. But you've also got to be prepared in case something does happen, in case your miracle does come. You want to make sure that you are ready to re-enter society. And I thank God that is what I was able to do with my time, was to prepare to re-enter society as a free woman.
Well, this is something that Jared Kushner, who is a special advisor to the president, and Kim Kardashian, who came on board for you in such a big way, and the president want to make happen for other people. What's your message to them tonight?
My message to President Trump is, thank you so much, President Trump, for taking the time to really look at my case and to really look at me. And as I've said before, I promise you, President Trump, I will make you proud that you gave me that second chance. And I tell Kim, keep your passion. I believe that what she is seeing happen for me is really stirred something even more up in her, a desire to help people, as she said, one person at a time.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was funny. You said that one of the things that shocked you the most when you got out was how much people were looking at their phones. I thought, that's a big change since you were away, right?
Yes. Yes.
But good thing Kim Kardashian was looking at her phone, because I think that's how she found you. Alice,
that is exactly how she found me.
Thank you so much, Alice. We really wish you all the best. And Michael, thank you so much for bringing Alice to us today. Good to see you both tonight.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having us on.
You bet. One story, right? So coming up next, an unusual thing happened at the White House today as Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe really rushed to Washington with a message for the president before he goes to Singapore. What was so urgent for Shinzo Abe? General Jack Keane on that. And a double standard for Democrats, the new list of demands that they have for any potential North Korea deal. But where were those concerns when they signed off on the Iran deal? Corey Lewandowski with his take after this. Just out tonight, brand new Fox polls show that more Americans believe that President Trump, who comes out on top in the nuclear summit with North Korea. 40% say Trump is more likely to walk away with a better deal for America compared to 30% for North Korea. Perhaps that's one reason that Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe flew halfway around the world last minute today for a meeting with the president, putting some pressure on the president to consider the interests of our allies like Japan, despite his promise to put America first. Here now, General Jack Keane, Fox News senior strategic analyst and chairman of the Institute for the Study of War. General, always good to see you. Thank you for being here tonight. This meeting was somewhat unexpected. What do you think was on his mind? Why did he need to speak to the president before he went to Singapore?
Well, President Trump has the closest relationship with Abe than any other foreign leader, and they just saw each other in Mar-a-Lago a couple of months ago. What he's really concerned about, abductees are an issue, political and emotional issue back home that's addressed. He knows that President Trump gets that. He knows that President Trump gets denuclearization of North Korea. What he's concerned about is he doesn't want the ballistic missiles that can reach Japan being decoupled from the denuclearization issue or being traded away as a negotiating point and not take all the missiles out. That's his message for President Trump. I know that because I was in Japan a few weeks ago with his foreign ministry, and that was their top issue, and they said we're working it out for the, for our prime minister to talk to the president about that issue. So that's really why he rushed in here prior to the Singapore summit.
Well, you can understand it. I mean, their top priority is nuclear weapons that could reach America, but our allies are going to be very concerned about their own North Korea's defensive mechanisms, and North Korea, of course, is going to want to have the ability to defend itself. This is Mike Pompeo on Kim and what he expects. Let's watch this.
What I have said publicly is he has indicated to me personally that he is prepared to denuclearize, that he understands that the current model doesn't work, that he's prepared to denuclearize, and that, two, he understands that we can't do it the way we've done it before.
What did you make of that?
Well, that's the first time he said that publicly, Martha. We have speculated that on your show for weeks after he came back from the visit, because it's the reason why President Trump's whole attitude turned positive about the upcoming summit many weeks ago. The second thing he said today, which I thought was also news, is that he said they're going to come up with a security document to protect North Korea's security interest indefinitely, and they're going to pass that to the Congress and ratify that as a treaty and a security document. That's news breaking as far as I'm concerned, because he wants to use that as leverage to get North Korea denuclearized, because Kim Jong-un's #1 issue is the future security of his regime, himself, and his family. He's a young man, and he's got 40-plus years in front of him.
Yeah, I mean, he was also talking with the Russians the other day. So, I mean, how does that play into all this before I let you go?
Well, I think the Russians are trying to slow this process down.
Yeah.
They're always interested in rubbing the United States' nose in something. They don't want a big W here for President Trump and the United States. That's what they're doing.
All right. General Jack Keane, thank you. Good to see you tonight, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
And just ahead of next week's Singapore summit, Senate Democrats have a list of demands for President Trump as he heads into those negotiations. But aren't these the same demands that they ceded to Iran by President Obama years ago? Joining me now, Corey Lewandowski, former Trump 2016 campaign manager. Corey, good to see you. Obviously, the president has always been very much against the Iran deal. He was critical of it for just the reasons that I said, that it didn't have any time anywhere inspections, that it wasn't verifiable. Now they're claiming that they want no deal that doesn't have exactly those things from North Korea.
Martha, the Democrats are posturing here because they know that this president is on the precipice of doing something that Barack Obama could not do, which is denuclearizing the North Korean peninsula, and finally, for the first time in the history of our country and North Korea, putting the two principles together to try and work something out for the betterment of the world. And when you look back at how terrible the Iran deal was, all that we gave away, we see in the last 48 hours, the media is reporting that the Iran deal, first the interim deal and then the final deal, gave them access to the U.S. banking system, which they never briefed Congress on. They did this behind the scenes. Congress was completely kept in the dark when members of the Obama administration went overseas to try and negotiate this deal. And it was a terrible deal from day one, and that's why the president said we couldn't have it anymore.
All right, let's take a look at this tweet from the president on tariffs, because this is another hot issue as he heads into the G7. These are our allies and our friends that he's talking about here. Please tell Prime Minister Trudeau and President Macron that they are charging the U.S. massive tariffs and create non-monetary barriers. The EU trade surplus with the United States is $151 billion, and Canada keeps our farmers and others out. Look forward to seeing them tomorrow. What do you think?
Look, I love the president, right? Because you know exactly where he's coming from, and this is why the American people love him, because he's going to go to the G7 and see our allies, see Great Britain, see Japan, see Germany, and he's going to say, guess what, fellas? You have to be fair with us. Free trade is not free when it costs the United States tens or hundreds of billions of dollars, and he's coming there with the agenda, which he talked about on the campaign, and he has talked about as the president, which is putting America first, and having a massive trade deficit with our allies is not helpful to the United States. So he's going to go and renegotiate. That's what we elected him to do.
All right, but before I let you go, I have to get your thoughts. You know the president so well. You know, what do you think it's going to be like when he walks into that room and he and Kim Jong-un shake hands and meet each other? What's he going to say to him?
Look, I think first and foremost, the president's going to make Kim Jong-un feel very welcoming and put him at ease and try and have an immediate friendship like he has done with so many other world leaders so that he can have the advantage of having that friendship while they're negotiating. You look at what he's done with Abe, with Macron, with so many others.
Yeah, but this is not Abe or Macron. I mean, this is somebody who had his half-brother killed in an airport.
Oh, no, look, there's no question. Kim Jong-un has some very serious problems, but this president is a great deal maker. He's going to go and establish a rapport because it has never been done before. And don't forget, the United States holds all the cards in this negotiation. He's negotiating from a position of strength because of the sanctions that we have on North Korea right now. This president said they will not come off unless they denuclearize. He's been very clear about that. So we are going there in a position of strength. And if Kim Jong-un wants to have some of those sanctions relieved, then he has to agree to the denuclearization.
It's going to be fascinating to watch. Corey, thank you very much. Good to see you tonight.
Thank you.
So still to come, remember this from the other night?
I had some California delegates come up to me and say, by far you're the best candidate. But you know what? The name Omar Siddiqui will not work in Orange County.
How about that? Candace Owens is here on the California congressional candidate who was told that he was too brown to win. Plus, one of our next guests calls it one of the quietest big scandals that anyone can remember. And now here's news that there could be a plea deal in the case involving the longtime IT Democratic staffer and the former head of the DNC, Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Byron York and Mark Penn with their thoughts on this intriguing story next. So this story back in the news tonight, the bizarre case of a former IT aide to leading Democrat Debbie Wasserman Schultz has now taken another odd turn, as reports suggest that Imran Arwan and his wife may be ready to make a plea deal. Now President Trump is starting to weigh in. He tweeted this morning: our Justice Department must not let Arwan and Debbie Wasserman Schultz off the hook. The Democrat IT scandal is a key to much of the corruption we see today. They may want to make a plea deal to hide what is on their server. Where is the server? Really bad, he writes. Chief National Correspondent Ed Henry, live in Washington with the story. So what do we know about this, Ed?
Well, Martha, a very explosive case for Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Remember, she was ousted as the DNC chair in the middle of the 2016 presidential campaign. Now she has this former staffer who was indicted while he was still on her payroll on 4 counts for bank fraud and making false statements. As you mentioned, Imran Awan, her former IT aide. He's insisted through his attorney he is innocent and that he was targeted because he's Muslim. But he and his wife were indicted last August, about a month after Wasserman Schultz's aide was arrested at Dulles Airport trying to board a plane to Pakistan. His wife had already fled with several $1,000s in cash, and the FBI says the couple had already wired almost $300,000 back home to Pakistan. Awan, his wife, and other relatives collected at least $4 million in taxpayer money since 2009, working for various House Democrats, most of whom fired Awan in February 2017 amid questions of double billing and alleged equipment theft. The whole family was barred from using the House network, but here it gets interesting. For some reason, Wasserman Schultz did not fire him until months later, July of 2017, when he got arrested, insisting he provided other services that did not involve the House network, and she got quite agitated when the Capitol Police did not return her tech equipment that was being looked at. Now, Republicans like Ron DeSantis, who's been probing this matter, have also been puzzled about the fact that Awan family members got paid six-figure salaries by taxpayers and were possibly not even showing up for some of that work. One family member apparently drawing another salary from McDonald's, yes, McDonald's, while other family members were running what was called a fake car rental outfit. Listen.
Was there some underlying reason why the Awans were basically given free rein to run a scheme inside the Congress where they're getting paid for no-show jobs and they have basically unadulterated access to these members' servers?
Under my understanding, the Capitol Police is not able to confiscate members' equipment when the member is not under investigation.
If that in fact is the case, and with the permission of, through the investigation, then we'll return the equipment. But until that's accomplished, I can't return the equipment.
I think you're violating the rules when you conduct your business that way, and should expect that there would be consequences.
Consequences, she said. She may get more agitated at the fact that now there are reports there's going to be a plea deal with the Justice Department with the couple. We don't know what they're going to tell prosecutors, but the bottom line is that Wasserman Schultz has previously said this whole story is being pushed by Republicans to divert attention away from, yes, Russian meddling in the 2016 campaign. Martha.
Interesting. Ed, thank you very much. So joining me now, Byron York, chief political correspondent for the Washington Examiner and a Fox News contributor, and Mark Penn, president and managing partner of the Stagwell Group, and he served obviously as a pollster for the Clintons. This is interesting, and what Debbie Wasserman Schultz just said is has been written about a lot. Politico wrote a piece saying that several hardline conservatives and right-wing bloggers have seized on the conspiracy theories related to the investigation, claiming that Awan had access to Wasserman Schultz's emails while she was chairwoman of the Democratic National Committee, and that he, not Russia, was behind the leak of thousands of DNC emails during the election. Well, what do you think about that theory, Byron?
Well, as Ed was just talking about, her saying that perhaps this was being used to divert attention from the Trump-Russia matter, I think the Trump-Russia matter has diverted attention from this. It's really a very big deal, and the whole the Pakistani angle, the fact of wiring so much money to Pakistan, being caught at the airport, and really the kind of ferocious loyalty of Debbie Wasserman Schultz to her staffer, even after a number of other Democrats had backed away big time, and they'd been accused of crimes. A lot of this stuff just doesn't seem to add up.
Yeah, I mean, it's, when you go back and you look at it, Mark, and you think about those days during the DNC, and her emails start trickling out, and, everybody wants to know where the server is. They never turn the server over, and now she's protecting him. She is accusing other people of having some sort of bias against him because he's from Pakistan. What goes through your mind when you watch all this thing? What are your questions?
Well, look, first I have to say, we can't rush to judgment in the absence of really having an understanding of the facts. But the truth of the matter is, we don't know whether or not this couple and family that had access to a lot of Democratic email, whether or not they were doing something wrong with that. And what we need to know is that any plea deal will include full disclosure of all these facts and either give some credence to some of these theories or refute them definitively. I think that's what we're entitled to, and that's what we don't have right now.
So, Byron, we don't know what they're going to do in this plea deal or why they're taking a plea deal, but that's somewhat surprising.
Well, yeah, it is, and here again, they were captured. This whole bank fraud angle here, and the political aspect of it. And President Trump is saying perhaps this is a key to all sorts of other things. Not sure we can see how that exactly works, but this is something that affected a lot of Democrats in the Senate, in the House, and this group of people around Imran Awan were paid a lot of money, very high-end House salaries for apparently doing very, very little. I mean, it's a really mysterious
that's
case.
what's weird. And she continued to keep them on the payroll. They continued to be paid by the taxpayer. And here's something from a piece that looked at this a while back. Capitol Police say they tossed Imran and his associates off the House network after he provided them with fraudulent data of what was supposed to be a copy of the data on the House Democratic Caucus server, a server that Imran was accessing against House rules as he moved data for the many Democrats in the House and he and his associates worked for reasons that we don't know. So, I mean, Mark, you look at this, you go back, as I said, to those days, and it's very curious.
Well, that's right. I mean, they had access clearly to tons of Democratic email. There are clearly a lot of questions about why they were kept on the payroll. The funding and finances here are really bizarre. All of this is bizarre. I don't want to get over my skis here and create a whole conspiracy theory. We shouldn't do that. But we should demand these facts because there are a lot of questions here about the kind of access they had and what they could have done that could be a real key to this whole puzzle.
Hopefully we're going to learn a lot as this process plays out, because as you guys point out, it's weird and there's a lot of questions. Byron, thank you very much. Mark Penn, always a pleasure. Thank you. So Samantha Bee returned to television after she made those vile comments about Ivanka Trump. But not everybody is buying the apology, including Candace Owens, who is here to explain why, coming up next. So a little update on the story we just did. President Trump just tweeting moments ago about something that we talked about with Corey Lewandowski. Quote, Prime Minister Trudeau is being so indignant, bringing up the relationship with the United States and Canada, has had over the many years and all sorts of other things, but he doesn't bring up the fact that they charge us up to 300% on dairy, hurting our farmers, killing our agriculture. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes as they get underway. Okay, so Samantha Bee was back on TV last night. Maybe you didn't notice, but she was. She was back on TV last night after that really awful joke, which was not a joke at all, about Ivanka Trump, calling her a feckless word that we won't say. Listen now and tell me what you think of the apology.
A lot of people were offended and angry that I used an epithet to describe the president's daughter and advisor last week. It is a word I have used on the show many times, hoping to reclaim it. This time, I used it as an insult. I crossed the line, I regret it, and I do apologize for that. I want this show to be challenging, and I want it to be honest, but I never intended it to hurt anyone except Ted Cruz. Many men were also offended by my use of the word. I do not care about that.
All right. Here's Candace Owens, Communications Director for Turning Point USA. Candace, what did you think?
I thought that she didn't mean her apology whatsoever. She just wanted the show to keep going, and she used it in a strange way. She's almost trying to make it seem like she used it in an act of feminism, which is incredibly bizarre. I'm not surprised whatsoever to see that the show goes on because she's a liberal. If she was a conservative, her show would have been canceled effective immediately, and she probably would have been excommunicated from America. But she has the great fortune of being a liberal thinker.
Yeah, it was very interesting how the judgment gods work in these situations, and we see it happen all the time. There was sort of a rally of protectionism around her, and, I believe, people can be forgiven for all sorts of things, but she did not seem particularly contrite, and I don't really watch the show, but it doesn't seem like it's that funny to me, but maybe I just haven't seen it enough, so I don't know. But anyway, she gets to stick around. Another interesting topic, I spoke with Omar Siddiqui the other night, who was running for Congress in the 48th District in California. He had been told, he told us, by members of the Democrat Party in California, where you are, that he was too brown to win in his district. Here's what he said about that.
I had some California delegates come up to me and say, by far you're the best candidate, But you know what? The name Omar Siddiqui will not work in Orange County. You need to change your name. And you can imagine that was just unacceptable to me. I do not want to be judged on the color of my skin, but rather the content of my character.
So he's worked for the FBI and the CIA doing counterterrorism work for them. Dana Rohrabacher and Hans Kierstad won the district. They're the top two, and Omar came in with about 5%. So what do you think about that?
I'm not surprised whatsoever. I mean, I speak about this all the time, especially as a black conservative. The most racist things that have ever been said to me have been said by Democrats and by liberals, and it's always swept under the rug. Could you imagine if that was said to him by Republicans? This would be a top story on CNN that we would never be able to live down. Because it's said to him by Democrats, it's pretty much going to be swept under the rug, and they're going to keep moving. This is exactly what the left does. They are hypocritical. They prefer brown people voting for them, not working with them.
You know, where does that go from here? I mean, you are sort of, this is part of what you do to try to talk about these issues. Do you think it begins to resonate with people and they start to understand that perhaps tolerance isn't something that is particularly practiced in the Democrat Party on all fronts?
The conversation is changing completely, and I'm really honored to be at the forefront of it, along with so many different people. On the way over to the studio, I was actually watching a video of a young Mexican girl who was saying that she's tired of the racism that is so often happening on the left, and it doesn't get talked about. So people are starting to wake up. They're starting to understand that the left is hypocritical, that they pretend to champion our causes when, in fact, they just use us for votes every few years.
Very interesting. Candace, thanks. It's always good to talk to you. Thanks for coming on tonight. We'll see you soon.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
You bet. You bet. All right, quick break, and we'll be right back with more. So that is the story for this Thursday, June 7th. But as always, the story goes on, and we will be here to tell it tomorrow night. We hope you will too. Thanks, everybody. Here's Tucker.